touch, we were discussing the Trent DeGero investigation. Shane Ragland killed Trent DeGero, UK football player, back in 1994. The case went unsolved for several years. We left off with Shane Ragland's ex-girlfriend came forward, gave us information. At first was afraid to cooperate, eventually said that she would cooperate in an undercover operation to meet with Shane Ragland to try to give him a chance to either incriminate himself or deny it. You know, it goes both ways. We wanted to see what he had to say about it. So the way we set that up was Shane Ragland agreed to meet Amy at the Bluegrass Airport. And the whole premise of the meeting was it was basically an old girlfriend that was just wanting to catch up. We had him meet at the airport because we knew there we could screen and make sure he wasn't armed, and it was an area he couldn't ask her. That was the other thing too, right? You know, she had a layover. She had a flight to catch in an hour and a half. So there was a time constraint there. So it just couldn't go on and on and on. It enabled her to control the situation. So anyway, now they're at the airport. Shane Ragland's, or her flight arrives. The second that Shane arrived in the front gate, we had officers that were watching him.
This was an FBI Lexington police operation.
They helped out with it too. The night before, we went into the bar there at Bluegrass Airport and arranged to have recording devices put in. So everything was set up just like that. So these two could have a conversation, even to the point that we knew that you had to be careful because they were going to be talking about a murder. So we wanted to make sure that there was a table available with 2 tables on each side that were empty, so that they would be able to talk.
Comfortable.
Yeah. So what we did is we put a detective at each table, and then as soon as they sat down, the detective folded his newspaper and got up and left. And we just sort of hoped that no one else would sit down there in an interim, and it worked out that way. But anyway, so now you have Shane Ragland and Amy Lloyd, his ex-girlfriend, in the bar having this conversation. I'm in the next room, and I'm listening through headphones to the conversation. There were several of us in there listening to it. And she, begins the conversation just like a normal conversation. It's like you would if you hadn't seen someone in several years and you want to talk to them about things. Now, keep in mind, we had also briefed her the night before on how to do this. So because as you know, the things that we have to consider whenever we're gathering evidence like this, you can't entrap someone.
Entrapment, and I'll tell you what entrapment means. Crime fighters out there. Entrapment means in whose mind was the comment hatched.
Mm-hmm.
If Amy's initiated the conversation and talked about that, then it becomes entrapment.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so you got to be cautious about that sort of thing.
So with that in mind, she started the conversation. And it was basically talking about old times, old friends, catching up, what you've been doing, how's your dog, relationship stuff. And at one point in the conversation, she transitioned. They started talking about why they split up, why they weren't together anymore. And she did it perfectly. She said something to the effect of, there's something that's been bothering me. It was part of why we didn't make it. And it's because I never could understand why you did it. She kept it generic like that, it kind of thing. And you could tell he immediately knew exactly what she was talking about. And she said, I just need to know if you're sorry.
See, that's important for a jury.
Yeah.
Because jurors have life experiences. And they've been in conversations when somebody basically in that conversation acknowledges knowing what you're talking about. See?
But she said she executed that perfectly. She said, I just need to know if you're sorry. And then she went on to further.
Oh, she started crying.
Yeah, she started crying. But here's what she said, which was just brilliant. She says, I was reading an article. Trent was his name, right? He said Trent. He goes, yeah. He says, and she says, and his dad was just wanting to know why. Can you at least contact his dad and let him know why? Just let him have some closure so they can have some peace. I'm paraphrasing almost exactly how she worded it. And then we waited for his response. And his response was something like, I can't. you know, and then he goes on in the conversation to explain why I can't, you know, and then now he has peace in his life, and what's done is done, basically. And then he talks about he was angry with them, and he's not that kind of person anymore, and he just snapped. And so this is how this conversation back and forth. And she asked him, can you just get help? You know, this is maybe why your life is so messed up, because you've got this secret. You know, can you go get help? And he said, I can't take the chance. I can't do that. I mean, that's how the conversation went. So it wasn't a signed statement saying on this date I killed Trent DeGero, but the conversation was there. And if you hear the whole conversation, which was about 40 minutes long, everything's in context. And that's what you had to get across to the jury. But at one point he stopped the conversation. Remember that? And he says, look, you know what? I want to talk about this. It's making me nervous.
And then he said, "Are you setting me up?"
Are you setting me up?
Yeah. See, that was something that, if you watch the jury during the trial of this thing, when he said that, you know, the jurors looked right at him.
What you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, we had a female detective who was at the bar, and there was a code word, and I don't remember. Maybe I need a shot of vodka. I don't remember what it was. It was the phrase that we had given her that she was supposed to say if she needed to be pulled out, you know, and you know, needed a break. You know, there was a phrase if she sensed that her life was in immediate danger, like if she saw a weapon or something. Then there was a phrase with I'm just getting nervous. I need a break. And so at that point she said whatever that phrase was, and the detective walks up to her and goes, "Hey, Amy, I haven't seen you in forever," and they usher off to the bathroom like girls do. And
yeah, you need a support group.
Yeah, but then of course, she's still got the wire on, so I can hear her in the bathroom, and she's crying, and she's tore up, and he just asked me if he's being set up, and blah, blah, blah. It was just, but she got her stuff back together, and went back out there.
Meaning she got herself together.
Yeah, went back out there and finished the conversation. And we had, at that point, an acknowledgement. That meeting between Amy and Shane Ragland, I was going through his trash, literally looking for any evidence.
You call it a trash pull, I call it dumpster dive.
Yeah, we were just just looking for any evidence that could give us a search warrant to get in and try to find that gun. And we did find some evidence of some drug activity, which ultimately led to us getting a search warrant. But that was a parallel investigation. And so we waited, I believe it was a couple of days. It was maybe a couple of day turnaround, but based on what we had on the tape recording, based on the fact we were able to get the search warrant, we went in and initiated that, brought him into custody at that time on, I believe, some drug charges, and then initiated the search of the house. And of course, the way search warrants work is if this was a drug search warrant, you're allowed to go in and look for evidence related to drug activity. If you see anything else there that's in open view, that's related to another crime, then you can investigate that too. You know, in other words, if I'm going in to look for a stolen car in your garage, I can't go through your kitchen drawers. But if I'm going in to look for cocaine, that pretty much any place you could hide cocaine, I can look. And while I'm looking for that cocaine, if I come across a gun that's got a serial number scratched off of it, an officer has an obligation to investigate that, and then that can lead to a further investigation. So that's how the search warrant whole process works when you're initiating one. So in that case, we're looking for drug activity. We wind up finding a rifle that matched the description of the one.
And you'll remember from our show 2 weeks ago, we were looking for a unique rifle, an expensive .243 caliber rifle. And what did you find?
Well, we found a Weatherby .243, and Weatherby is a unique gun. There's in the gun world, there aren't very many of them made in the big scheme of things. The barrel configuration of a Weatherby rifle is unique too, to the point that it could have been a custom barrel. There just not that many around. So there, lo and behold, there's a Weatherby .243 rifle. I believe it's in Shane's bedroom, his closet. If I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And so we take possession of that.
And it had a scope on it. It's a high-priced rifle, and it was, and it turned out that when you had the bullet taken from the head of Trent DeGero analyzed by the crime lab, they said it had characteristics that were similar to that barrel. They couldn't identify it exactly, but they also said it could have been shot from that. And we found several other guns.
You know, and let's go to the CSI theory on that for a second, because I've had people ask me about that and other cases involving guns too. And the only way I can explain that is like this. I've actually worked cases involving police shootings, okay, where an officer has had to shoot someone. The officer hands you his gun when you get there and says, "This is the weapon that I fired." You take the bullets out of the suspect that he had to shoot, and you compare it to that pistol, and you can't get an exact match. Even though that officer was holding that gun, he says, "This is the gun I had." All the witnesses say that's the gun. That is the gun. Why don't you get an exact match? Well, in the case of a Glock, for instance, a Glock barrel is a lot smoother than a lot of other handgun barrels, and it doesn't leave
inside of the barrel.
Inside the barrel, so it doesn't leave as many marks on the projectile. So it's harder to match those marks to that barrel. Another reason is when that projectile leaves that barrel and hits a person, and it hits bone and fleshy parts of their body, sometimes it screws up the bullet to a point that you don't have enough of it there to match back to the barrel.
It breaks up, and you have pieces of the bullet, and not enough to make a comparison.
So, and there's a standard that they have to reach before they can say positively that that is the gun. And if it doesn't matter if 9 of those marks that they need are there, they got to have 10. Even so, 9 makes it, a 9 in 10 chance, but it's not exactly what they need. And that's what we had here. It's like, look, the chances, we can't eliminate this gun. We know that it's the same type of gun that was used. But we can't tell you it's the gun 100% for sure.
Well,
so it becomes circumstantial.
Yeah, but here's what you did, as I recall, you found a number of these 243 Weatherbys, and you took those to the crime lab, the ballistics, the firearms section, had them compare. They shoot a bullet out of it and then compare it to what they had, and they can say, and they did say, it's not this one.
Yeah.
It's not this one. And then the one that you got from Shane Ragland's bedroom, they say, this could be the one. We don't eliminate this gun, we eliminate all the others. And that was important.
Sure it was. But it does make it a circumstantial piece of evidence. That's where we are. It's all the circumstances point to it being that gun.
Okay, so Amy, we need to have Amy come to the grand jury.
That's right. So at this point we have Shane's acknowledgement, Shane Ragland's acknowledgement. We have a weapon that could be the weapon. We also had some other evidence too. I'll get into it later on. But so now we get our evidence. We arrest Shane Ragland, and at that point it goes up to a preliminary hearing, which winds up at the grand jury, which is at the point that it's literally handed over to your office, and the grand jury does their investigation.
It was fascinating because when we had to bring Amy in, and it was like she covered her, the police brought her in, and she had her coat over her head because she didn't want people to know who she was at that point.
Well,
and it was scary.
Well, we had some intel, if you want to use that term, which is exactly what it was, from KSP Intelligence Office and from our local folks too, that led us to think that there could be some people looking for Amy. We know
trying to locate her.
We know we had people looking for. Remember, we set it up like she lived in Atlanta, and within 2 days after his arrest, someone in Atlanta runs her credit report, which is something that any basic private eye or hitman's going to do if they want to find you. Yeah. So we don't know, but that's weird. It's like she's never even been to Atlanta. Why is someone running her credit report? We go down and check this. It was a pawn shop, I think, over in a bad neighborhood, and we're like, well, why are you running this girl's credit report? And I don't know what you're talking about. Like, oh, that's weird. So you're getting that kind of stuff going on, which leads us to believe that, you know what, we probably need to assume the worst and take the precautions we promised to protect this witness. And that's what we did. So,
and we moved her across the country.
That we did. And you know what? We're running out of time again.
Okay. Well, we're giving it hell here.
We'll see you next week on In Touch.